Today on the Top Facts channel, we are heading to the mountains, not to gaze at desolate landscapes, but rather to search for traces of humanity that have left us alone with mysteries of the past or the future. Places haunted by ghosts, anomalous areas, and inexplicable natural phenomena that have been discovered and filmed using drones are waiting for us right now. You're on the Top Facts channel. Let's quickly look at these 15 strangest things found in the mountains. Let's start with the present, which has roots in antiquity. But it doesn't always turn out to be a treasure. In the scenic part of Bosnia, in a place called Visoko, located northwest of Sarajevo, a sensation caused a stir in 2006. A series of sharp-pointed hills sparked an explosion of curiosity, scientific debates, and media buzz. Previously, these hills were considered natural formations. However, a new hypothesis proposed by an American-origin businessman claimed that they were ancient pyramidal structures created by an advanced civilization. Supposedly, the shape of the hills hinted that they contained a complex system of labyrinths that arose 30,000 years ago. The tops were used as navigational points for intergalactic communication. The Bosnian pyramid hypothesis quickly became popular among the local population. It became a new symbol of national pride. Tourists flocked to the town and began ascents. However, the successful business flow was halted by skepticism and criticism from the scientific community. Specialists in archaeology, including the European Association of Archaeologists, refuted these claims. They supported that such mountain formations are common in the world and are called irons. Inside them is a typical mixture of clay and sandstone. Starting excavations could only harm the ecosystem, causing landslides and collapses. Concrete blocks discovered at the base turned out to be unrelated to the supposed ancient structure. Since scientists could not be convinced, the Bosnian pyramids were declared a pseudoscientific mystification, and tourists went on to conquer other mysterious peaks. Another creative surge, this time aimed at the surface of the mountains, not the underground. Alberto Gutierrez, known as the Hermit of Nicaragua, or simply the Stone Man, was born in 1944. At the age of 33, he left home to devote himself to free-form creativity in nature. He had always been drawn to the mountains and forests, and when the war began in Nicaragua, Alberto realized that his time had come. He settled in a forest cabin without electricity and running water and began to carve sculptures on the mountains using simple tools. He used metal blades and pieces of rebar. Soon, elephants, cheetahs, and ornamental designs appeared on the surrounding rocks, and Alberto, because of his lifestyle, became a local attraction. He was visited by about 30,000 tourists over the decades. His fame spread online, and now you've heard of him. It's funny because the artist never learned the technique formally. He just wanted to follow a childhood dream. Would you seclude yourself in the mountains and just engage in your hobby, eating mushrooms and nuts? Now it's the turn of a natural phenomenon. No human hand was involved in creating this wonder. Not far from the town of Afton in Wyoming, there is an unusual source where the water stops with a rhythmic interval, as the river has its own metronome. There are only 3 such places in the world, and the secret is presumably underground. Sometimes this creates a siphon effect, causing the water to stop and then continue flowing. The source is most active at the end of summer, which is located at the foot of a rocky mountain and is directly linked to the activity of groundwater. The mysterious spring is apparently hidden inside a cave. If you don't believe it, let's conduct an experiment. Take 2 containers of different heights and fill the taller one with water to the brim. Take a plastic drinking straw, close one end with a finger, and immerse the other end into the taller container. Tilt the closed end towards the shorter empty container and release the finger. The water will slightly back up and then flow downwards. The same principle applies to the underground waters that enter the cave through a narrow channel. And when the water reaches the edge, the siphon effect begins to suck the water out of the chamber, draining it downwards. When the water level reaches the previous mark again, the stream stops until the cycle repeats. If you time it, there is a 15-minute break for every 18 minutes of source operation. Water, the greatest treasure of all times. Its presence distinguishes our planet from all others, and it provides us with life. This fossil was found deep under the Iberian Mountains on the island of Sicily. geologists discovered an ancient underground basin of fresh water, not just groundwater, but a whole aquifer layer around 6 million years old. The main thickness of the water is located hundreds of meters below the surface and contains around 17.5 cubic kilometers, slightly less than Lake Tanganyika, the third largest freshwater lake in the world by volume. Scientists suggested that all this water accumulated underground after the Strait of Gibraltar became blocked 6 million years ago. During the next 700,000 years, the Mediterranean Sea partially dried up. Rainwater seeped and accumulated in underground reservoirs for millennia, where it was absorbed by carbonate rocks like a sponge. When the sea level returned, this basin was sealed under the pressure of seawater. It's interesting to think how many more secret wells Earth holds for wasteful people who constantly face a shortage of fresh water. Just think, for millions of years, the planet has been accumulating water so that today we can quench our thirst. The oldest library in the world at St. Catherine's Monastery on Mount Sinai in Egypt is a treasure trove of thousands of manuscripts and books from all around the world, collected over many centuries. In some texts, using modern technologies, scientists have discovered a second layer. This is the real treasure. Can you imagine one inscription lying under another? Not for the first time, history has been rewritten according to the current version of updates, and in antiquity, it is not uncommon for monks to write directly over an old text in another language. Thus, compositions in languages that have long disappeared from use, such as Caucasian Albanian and Palestinian Aramaic, were discovered. These manuscripts open up many possibilities for us and uncover many secrets of antiquity. The world is much richer and more diverse than we imagine. How many civilizations have disappeared without a trace, becoming a hidden layer under new history? Let's move on to the discoveries of ancient artifacts. There's still a lot of interesting things lying in the mountains. In 2017, in Turkey, during the excavation of a burial mound in western Anatolia, archaeologists stumbled upon an impressive find. Among human remains, approximately 3,700 years old, brain tissue cells were discovered in some of them. How could they have been preserved if these people's remains had been buried under the rubble of an earthquake for thousands of years? However, it was the circumstances of their demise that provided scientists with the biomaterial. The buildings collapsed and trapped their inhabitants. Then, a powerful fire destroyed the entire area and sucked the oxygen from the debris. It turns out that the brain first boiled and then dried out. Additionally, the soil in the region was rich in minerals. Potassium, magnesium, and aluminum formed a composition called corpse wax. All these conditions ensured the exceptional preservation of brain cells. They usually disintegrate shortly after a person's death, but here they were sealed in a capsule. Scientists obtained material for biological research. It's interesting to find out what they learned about the health of people who lived 4,000 years ago. Did they suffer from heartburn? Did they ever get the flu? The Mountains of Norway, an archaeology museum for the keen eye. Amateur travelers and archaeologists often catch their luck, finding gifts from the Romans. In 2019, on a mountain pass, they dug up leather summer footwear, presumably 1,700 years old. It had lain in the ice since the Iron Age. If people walk through the high mountain pass in leather sandals of the Roman type, it means that this place was popular among pedestrian and equestrian routes, a trade crossing or a pilgrimage site. The puzzle unravels if we assume that the Romans were good at navigating in the mountains, meaning they had a navigational system. And they conquered the harsh climate, which has changed little since then, with the help of sheepskins and dense fabrics. A network of ancient mountain trails connected secluded areas of Norway with the coast, and they were actively used from the 2nd to the 10th century AD. As the ice continues to melt, it reveals more and more secrets. The heroes of the Iron Age clearly left messages about their life. In 2017, deer hunters in Norway found on top of a mountain what should not have survived, but a true Viking sword. According to the analysis, this sword could be no less than 1,200 years old. Its era was the time of the warlike heroes who lived around 950 AD. Tales and legends came to life before people's eyes, when they saw the beautifully preserved ancient weapon that had been used in battle. Of course, there were traces of rust and organic materials on the blade. These could be particles of leather straps or bone decorations, but it remained intact despite being found between two stones. There it was left, firmly wedged. Was it a message making a boundary, a place with a clue to a treasure, or a warning? We don't exactly know, but local archaeologists and enthusiasts eagerly searched the surroundings with metal detectors, trying to discover new finds, but they all came up empty-handed. The cold climate and low pressure in the mountains area brought us the Viking weapon, but we will never know its name. Let's move to Switzerland. It too was part of the Roman Empire. In 2020, an ordinary day during a hike in the Swiss Alps, a traveler stumbled upon a small stone and saw an ancient Roman coin underfoot. Soon, archaeologists arrive, and as a result of excavations at an altitude of 8,000 feet, they unearth another 100 coins, 27 gemstone crystals, shoe nails, a brooch, and even fragments of a memorial plaque. This suggests that there was once a sanctuary here, a pilgrimage site where people brought valuable items. The coins were the most talkative. They bore images typical of the period from the 1st to the 5th century AD. This is a whole chapter of history, which includes the dizzying rise and fall of the vast and powerful empire, whose domain stretched over vast territories, from seas to highlands. Experts on ancient Rome determined that people had been coming here for centuries. Possibly the natural beauty of the landscape or the abundance of mountain crystal supported their interest. Several Roman temples were located in this area, and later, metal detector enthusiasts discovered several large hoards. In Italy, they found the oldest tree in Europe. It is a Bosnian pine, and it grows in the Pollino National Park in the south of the country. Scientists used radiocarbon analysis and also looked at the annual rings and determined the age of the tree. It was 1,230 years old. This remarkable natural wonder was named Italus, and the tree continues to live. It was a young sapling when the Byzantine Empire was flourishing, and probably the Vikings also rested in its shade. Although its growing place cannot be called a dendropark, the high-altitude climate is harsh, but the endurance of this pine can serve as a symbol of longevity. Italus is neighbored in the grove by other ancient botanical representatives. The tree has outlived many of its peers, the fall of empires, wars, revolutions, and technological achievements of the 20th and 21st centuries. Italus has become not only a silent witness of history, but also a valuable source of information about the ecology of the last millennium. In 2012, in the south of Spain, archaeologists found a tomb that was more than 5,500 years old. There is one remarkable place in this area, the Lonely Mountain. Its official name is Piedras Blancas, which means white stones. Notably, every year on the day of the summer solstice, June 21st, the sunrise creates a mesmerizing dance of shadows on the slope of the mountain. Sunlight falls in a special way. This structure resembles the New Grange burial mound in Ireland. Through a window in the absolutely dark 62-foot corridor on the days of the winter solstice, a beam of light penetrates and for a few minutes pierces to its very center. Let's imagine that 5,000 years ago, in the Neolithic area, someone managed to design and build such a structure. Starting with the material, 97 stone slabs weighing over a ton each, ending with calculations. This someone was very knowledgeable in astronomy, geometry, and physics. The Egyptian pyramids appeared 500 years later. So, who created them? Aliens, maybe? In the cold, high-altitude areas of the Peruvian Andes, archaeologists have found an extraordinary settlement, the oldest known evidence of human presence at high altitude. Situated 14,764 feet above sea level, this was certainly no resort. But 12,000 years ago, during the Ice Age, people were already battling the lack of oxygen, cold, and hunger. Their dwellings in the rocks, with the ceilings and walls blackened by soot, were adorned with rock paintings. Among the items left behind were stone scrapers, spear tips, and the bones of large mammals. Before us is a real-life installation of early human adaptation to extreme conditions of the highlands. The culture of the Chachapoyas Indians thrived in the Andes in pre-Columbian times. They were also called the warriors of the cloud or cloud people. They lived in the Amazonian Andes in what is now Peru. The high-altitude region, covered in dense tropical forests, provided them with a unique climate. They could hunt, gather water, cultivate the land on steppe terraces, and even build structures at altitudes between 6,000 and 10,000 feet. It must be said, the monumental fortress called Culap is impressive. It's often compared to Machu Picchu. This was a true fortified stone fort. The Chachapoya civilization existed from 500 to 1470 AD, and all this time they were at odds with the Incas, protesting against their domination. If they had known what awaited them, they would have united to fight the Spanish conquerors. But they chose differently. They allied with the Europeans to reclaim their lands. As a result, they were struck by foreign diseases, which ultimately led to the decline of their civilization. Modern archaeological discoveries continue to shed light on this mysterious culture. In 2006, a subterranean burial with mummies was discovered high in the mountains. Thus, scientists were able to reconstruct the appearance of the Chachapoyas and their cultural practices. According to contemporaries, they were fair-skinned and beautiful people, and the women looked like goddesses. Many of them became wives of the Incas. However, the Incas' treatment of the Chachapoyas was extremely cruel. Young male prisoners and children were sacrificed to the gods. They were even given narcotics, then had their hearts ripped out, left to die from the cold or buried alive. Therefore, a political alliance was impossible, and the figures of the Chachapoya mummies froze in a silent scream of horror with hands raised in defense. Between the valleys in the region of southwestern China, a curious burial was discovered by a drone. In the mountains, hundreds of mysterious wooden coffins were neatly stacked, but no explanations were given. Likely, this was the practice of the ancient Bo and Goyu peoples. They believed that placing a coffin on the mountain would facilitate the soul's ascent to heaven. This is just one explanation. In practical terms, mountain burial is more ecological. Predators and scavengers cannot easily reach there. Perhaps these people had moved there temporarily due to wars and did not intend to settle permanently. Thus, they kept everything ready for relocation. Either way, they made sure that their ancestors would be closer to heaven in the literal sense. In the mountains of the Yansin area, there's a hidden fascinating site known as the Guyaju Caves. Discovered in 1984 during a cultural relics expedition, these caves formed an entire city, a complex network of over 117 caves with 350 chambers nestled in the rocky slopes. The structure resembles a honeycomb and features a thoughtful layout. The design of each cave includes 3 rooms, a small living room, bedroom, and storeroom. There are even 2-story apartments connected by intricate cave staircases or stone bridges. The apartments vary in shape and size. The length of the largest hall is about 65 feet, and the average ceiling height was only around 5'3" to 5'6", suggesting that the local inhabitants were quite short. The cave system includes its own drainage and water storage system, indicating a high standard of living with advanced engineering technologies. Among the chambers were not only living quarters, but also halls for public events and rituals, as well as royal chambers. Inside there was furniture carved from the rocks, beds, lamps, storage compartments, and stone tablets. The largest and most complex chamber, known as the Golden Temple, was used for gatherings and religious ceremonies. Who built these caves remains a mystery. Some historians suggest that it was the Mongolian people. Others associate the caves with the grain storage of the Tang Empire or military garrisons of the Han Dynasty. In 1991, the caves were officially open to visitors, and in 2013, they were included in the list of China's most important historical and cultural sites. In the Gansu province within Maishishan mountain range lies a magnificent ensemble of rock art and the largest ancient Buddhist monastery, a complex network of grottos carved into the Rocky Mountains. The history of this cave city dates back to the late Qin dynasty, around 400 AD. Over the course of 1,500 years, the construction continued. 12 Chinese dynasties only added to the monastery's value. The oldest statues were crafted by Indian masters, with work completing in the 20th century. Today, it stands as a preserved collection of stunning statues and sculptures carved into the rock. 221 caves are connected by balconies and staircases. This heritage contains around 10,000 clay and stone sculptures and more than 14,000 square feet of frescoes, iron objects, jade items, and ancient manuscripts. The grottos are situated at heights from 100 to 300 feet, divided into southwestern and southeastern parts. It is evident that the central part was destroyed by an earthquake. The most famous cave is named Pavilion of the Seven Buddhas. This site is worth visiting not only for those interested in the history of Buddhism, but the beauty of the landscape and the grandeur of the construction are simply breathtaking. No wonder the site is protected by UNESCO. The time of mysticism and eerie tales has arrived. Bungar Fort is located in the heart of India, Rajasthan, and its history is shrouded in frightening details, both legendary and real. The ruins of the fortress are considered one of the most terrifying places in India, and local authorities prohibit visiting the fort after sunset. It is said that the once flourishing town was deserted in a single day, and now only ghosts inhabit its ruins. But the scarier the stories, the more tourists and adventurers flock. It was built for his grandson in 1613 by Maharaja Singh I, and the city's story began with a curse. According to one legend, a sage cursed the city because of a broken promise by the Raja to not construct buildings that would cast a shadow over his dwelling. According to another, a sorcerer failed to win the heart of a princess and doomed the city to extinction. Either way, as a result of panic or famine, the residents hastily abandoned the fort, and it truly became deserted. Now, inexplicable events occur. People disappear, or accidents happen to them. Therefore, foreign tourists are forbidden to enter without special permission. There are no roofs left. According to the curse, any attempt to build a roof supposedly led to its collapse. Despite its ominous reputation, ancient Hindu temples stand within the fort. Perhaps they don't want to coexist with people. This is a well-known story. Very scary, by the way. It unfolded in the picturesque Pendle Hill in England. Here in Lancashire in 1216, a trial was held over witches. 20 people, mostly members of two families, were accused of killing fellow citizens through witchcraft. The accusations were based on dubious evidence that these women, led by the 80-year-old woman Demdike, transformed into animals using potions and spells and cast curses. Mostly, the evidence was provided by neighbors' testimonies and coercion into voluntary confession. 10 women were hanged, including 9-year-old Janet, who refused to confess the misdeeds and insisted on her innocence until death. After the executions, the spirits of the witches frequently appeared throughout the country, and a detailed book was written about the unmasking. The most dangerous aspect of the period in history is that the absence of clear evidence, anyone could be subjected to torture and execution using a mix of superstition and law. Now I will tell you a chilling story about a place called the Laurel Grove. This estate in Louisiana is known for its sad fate and has a notorious reputation as a paranormal site. The mansion was built on an Indian burial ground in 1796 by the rebellious General David Bradford, and then the property passed to his daughter and her husband. A series of tragedies began with the new owner, Clark Woodruff, and this is where the ghost sightings that have become local legends started. A female slave named Chloe, who was possibly closest to the owner, overheard a conversation not meant for prying ears, and for this, Clark Woodruff ordered her ear to be cut off. From then on, she wore a turban, but she did not let the matter drop. Chloe planned to poison the owner. She added poisonous oleander leaf extract to a holiday pie. However, instead of the owner, Clark's wife and their 2 daughters tasted the pie. After such a treat, they died. Clark Woodruff began to execute and torture anyone who fell under his suspicion. Other slaves decided to take justice into their own hands out of fear for their lives. They hanged Chloe, and her body was thrown into the river. However, Chloe's spirit still haunts the plantation to this day. After the death of his wife and children, the owner ordered all mirrors to be covered with sheets, but one remained uncovered. To this day, it shows fingerprints of the children's hands and strange stains. It is said that their souls were not freed, but remained locked in the cursed mirror. In 1834, the new owner, Ruffin Gray Sterling, doubled the estate's size, but did not bring happiness. After shooting robbers at the doorstep of the house, an indelible bloodstain appeared. It keeps away anyone who tried to clean it. The owner's son-in-law was shot on the staircase. Soon after, people in the house began hearing footsteps that stopped exactly on the 17th step where the young man died. When the house was turned into a hotel, paranormal activity intensified. In 1922, a photo of a semi-transparent girl in a turban was even taken. What do you think? Did this deter guests? Not at all. The last owner wrote a book about the house and began advertising it as a haunted hotel. A river of tourists annually brought in revenue, and this story became the beginning of such a business and entered the film industry. Would you tickle your nerves in such a house? What discovery intrigued you the most? Nature, mysticism, or history? Write to us about it in the comments, and also subscribe to Top Facts so you never miss the release of new unique compilations on our channel.